Hey everyone, I just wanted to do a quick review on the Blu Studio One Plus, and I hope the folks over at GSM Arena don't mind me plugging their site. If you haven't ever used GSM Arena, you should head over to GSM Arena and check out all that you can do over there. It's very good for comparing phones. It's good for looking at very detailed specs about any particular device. This is actually the site I used to make the decision as to whether or not I was going to get this phone right here from Newegg. I'd also like to plug Newegg. It's a great place to get devices. Um, they had the best price I could find. They got me my phone fairly quickly, and actually, if you add to the cart, or at least when I did, I saw a price here of $150, shipping included, and I got the device in about 3 days. So I highly recommend, if you're going to buy a cell phone, that you head over here to newegg.com and check out all their different offers and deals. I can't promise by the time that you see this video that the offer will be the same. Hopefully it will be better. But anyway, check it out and look up the Blu Studio One Plus. And I guess this is also a plug for BLU. I've seen them around. I've seen them at Best Buy. I've seen people that use the phone. I was a little bit reluctant to buy a phone from BLU because I kind of thought, well, the price is kind of low. You know, it might be too good to be true. I'm not sure if this is a good device or not, and I have to tell you, it absolutely exceeded my expectations. So, a little bit of background on me: I'm a software guy. I've been in software for about 9 years, and I was also a sales rep for AT&T at one point. So, I'm a little bit of a mobile guru, and I also make mobile apps. So, I'm like knee deep in mobile. So, I'll try to give you my pitch on this device without getting too technical, but also without leaving out too many details. So, this device has a lot of the features like typical high-end smartphones that you see right now. They've got the 13 megapixel camera. They've got 2 gigs of RAM, about a 5.5-inch screen, and a 5 megapixel front shooter. Now, if these specifications sound familiar to you, it's because they are. These are actually the exact specifications of the iPhone 6 Plus and of the iPhone 6s Plus. The same screen resolution, the same screen size, likely the same internal storage depending on which device you got. Actually, a bigger battery than the iPhone, the same RAM, and the same cameras. Now, I'm not going to say that this camera is going to shoot the same quality picture as an iPhone. It's probably not going to. In fact, I'd probably say it's definitely not going to. They put a lot of money into a lot of money and time into the software. Uh, so it's not just the camera, it's the software, and it's all the post processing that they do. The other thing I can tell you is that the processor in this phone, although it is an octa-core, which is amazing for this price, $150 for a 1080 screen and an octa-core is mind-bogglingly good. This is an unbelievable deal. I've never seen a deal like this in my life. I never thought I would. So it's a mind-bogglingly good deal. If you look at the benchmarks on this phone, although it's an octa-core and the iPhone is a dual-core phone, the um, the iPhone's dual-core multi-core processing capability, the benchmark, if you look at something like Geekbench, and I'll put in a plug for Geekbench here. It's a very good benchmarking software. I found that my end user experience compared to what the benchmarking utility said compared to a few different devices. So I'd use a device and it would say, okay, this one's a little slow. The benchmark would say, yeah, it's a little slow. I would run a benchmark, say, man, this thing's really fast, right? And then you have the real world experience. You go actually use that device. Yes, that's correct. This device is fast. So in my experience, if you look at the Geekbench benchmarks for particular devices or particular processors, in my experience, you will find that they are meaningful benchmarks. Now, by contrast, SunSpider is not a good, meaningful benchmark for real world use. SunSpider is a single threaded benchmark. which means it's going to tell you single core performance in a very isolated scenario. It's going to tell you single core performance in terms of running JavaScript. This is a very isolated test. It's a decent test for doing single core performance comparisons, but it is not the best test to run on the device to get the overall picture. Now, so you say, well, one's dual core, one's octa core. If the performance is the same, I'm actually a performance engineer, a software performance engineer. So you might say, if the performance is the same on the dual core versus the octa core is better, right? That's actually wrong. Um, the more processors you have for a given performance metrics, the worse. The reason is because if you have more processors, the software has to be much more advanced. It has to be multi-threaded. Then there's overhead in scheduling all of those threads. So ideally, you want to have as much power as you can in one core, maybe two cores. But then after that, you start to get diminishing returns. And if you think that's wrong, all you have to do is look up on Wikipedia and look up a thing called Amdahl's law, AMDAHLS law, and it will show you some graphs of the increase in the number of processor count relative to performance, and it also gives you an idea of how advanced the software has to be to take advantage of that. So a lot of programmers are sort of lazy. They're going to do the least amount of work they can possibly do to optimize an app. And because of that, I would say that an iPhone in real world use would blow any octa-core out of the water. Not even close. Because of all the scheduling overhead that you get and having to manage all those threads in order to be able to access all those cores. Now that said, the multi-core performance of a Note 5 is a little bit higher than an iPhone 6s Plus, but I would have to believe that the 6s Plus would have better real-world performance. Anyway, we're not here to talk about the iPhone, but we kind of are. So this phone has the same megapixel rear shooter as the iPhone. It has the same megapixel front shooter as the iPhone. Same screen size, same screen resolution, different processor. Now, in terms of multi-core performance, assuming that the software is 100% optimized, they're using something like task parallel library or the equivalent in Java. I'm a .NET guy, so I can't speak to Java, but the equivalent in Java, to try to really leverage all the cores that they can. They're creating threads, they're scheduling all the stuff like they should. Then this phone would be comparable to about an iPhone 5S. Now, iPhone 5S's still go for way more than $150. They're way more than $150 refurbished. So I bought one of these phones. I love it. It's fast. It has a pretty good battery life. My last Android phone was an Atrix HD. That phone had terrible battery life. The phone before that, I had an Atrix 4G. And after those two Android phones, I had two different Windows phones actually. I had a Lumia 635, which was a really, really good low-end phone. So I would say a Lumia 635 or a Lumia 640 would blow a low-end Android phone completely out of the water in terms of user experience. For one thing, it's a quad core. So my last phone was actually a Lumia 640 XL, and that phone had a Snapdragon 400. And this phone benchmarks about double of a Snapdragon 400. And I would say the end user experience is about double. Now, this is not a Snapdragon processor. This processor is a MediaTek octa-core. So it has a Mali GPU instead of something like an Adreno 330 or something like that. I haven't found any problems with it. I've only found one game. Unfortunately, it's a game that I like, that I had to drop the settings on in order for it to run okay. Every other game doesn't seem to be hard coded to Snapdragon. So there's a game called Asphalt Airborne. It's a very popular game. That game, if you love it, you're probably going to have to drop the settings down on this phone. For every other games, all the other games that I've tried, they've worked fine, more than fine. But I did think it was silly that my Windows phone with a Snapdragon 400 had way better performance on Asphalt Airborne than my MediaTek octa-core did in Android. But for other games, it's way better than my Windows phone. Now, I'm not sure why. I'm not sure if it's because of Snapdragon. I'm not sure if it's because of DirectX optimization or something like that. But that's just a word of caution. So I'll read through all these specs and I'll tell you what I think about them. Um, Physically, the phone looks great. It looks like a high-end phone. It looks like a lot like an iPhone, honestly, or a lot like a Samsung phone, maybe somewhere in between. This kind of square camera on the back reminds me of the Samsung Galaxy, and the way the front looks and how it's kind of curved on the corners and that sort of thing, and the aluminum back sort of reminds me of an iPhone. So that's kind of my thoughts. Um, the camera's pretty good. It has the same megapixels and the same aperture as my Lumia 640 XL, but the Lumia 640 XL does, like the iPhone, a world of post-processing. It actually takes a while. It probably takes about 30 seconds for the post-processing that the Lumia 640 XL does every time you take a photo, and it's a little bit annoying, but you get a little bit better pictures than you do with this phone that has the same megapixel camera, the same aperture. Okay, the HDR feature on this phone, I was not that impressed with. I've seen other phones, my Atrix HD, my Lumia 640 XL, where when you turn on HDR, it's like you have a different camera. With this phone, I did not see that, although the photos are acceptable. These aren't photos that you're going to use for ultra high quality family beach trip kind of thing. You know, if you want the memories for a lifetime, you may not want to use this phone. You may bring a proper Nikon or something like that. Otherwise, you might want to get an iPhone or a friggin' S6 or a Note 5 or something like that that has, you know, to me, approaching, you know, Nikon style quality photos. The secondary camera seems fine. Video seems fine. All these things. This says it has GPS, a GPS. It's probably good enough. I know my 640 XL, good grief, it had like the Chinese GPS and all these, you know, Baidu or whatever it is. The 14 different types of GPS things that it supported. Um, this is just one. It's probably good enough. I haven't used the FM radio yet. USB 2.0 is a little bit disappointing. It's 2016. Should probably have something better than that. That said, if you've got to move a whole lot of stuff, you can always rip the SD card out and throw it in a USB 3.0 SD card reader, and you'd probably be better off. So, this thing says it has up to 18-hour battery life. I guess I would vouch for that. It seems like it has at least half the battery life of my 640 XL, which has like, good grief, 30 something hour battery life. If you want a Windows phone and you never want to have to charge the thing, get a 640 XL. I know they have the higher end phones, the 950s and those things. Those things are overheating and restarting and things like that. Right now, at this point, until they do Surface Phone or something like that, go with the 640 XL. Processing power is good enough, and the battery life, I can almost guarantee you, will be the best battery life of any phone you have ever had. I went several months with no day charge. I don't even know where my car charger is. That's how good the battery life was on the 640 XL. And this phone is not bad, but I do miss that earth-shattering battery life that I had with the Lumia 640 XL. It's unbelievable. Um, Dual SIM is a little bit of a lie. With this phone, it's dual SIM or micro SD card and SIM. So in other words, if you put in a micro SD expansion slot for this guy, you're not going to be able to put in your second SIM, and you're going to be limited to that 16 gig internal storage. which we all know in truth is more like 10 after Android chews away at it. I believe that's what I had available when I popped the phone out of the box, is about 10 gig internal, which may be enough for some people. If you use a lot of cloud storage or you don't install a lot of games, it might be fine. Personally, I'm going to drop in a 32 gig SD card or better. This is one of the thinnest smartphones I've ever had. This is a thin phone. Uh, the other things I like about this phone comes with a case, it comes with headphones, comes with a charger. When I mean case, it has one of those gel cases that goes over the outside of it, and it's so thin, when I show it to people, they don't even know it has a case on it. So it's a very slim case. Charging speed, this phone appears to charge faster than my Lumia 640 XL did, while also having a bigger battery than the Lumia. The 640 XL had a 3000 milliamp battery. This one's 3200. It charges pretty quick. I would say it would charge from almost dead to full charge maybe 2 to 3 hours. I think my other phone was about 4, but it never died during the day, so it was not a big deal. You charge it at night, you can sleep at least 4 hours. It's all right. So, if you want a phone that's like a Galaxy S5 in terms of performance, but like a friggin' prepaid phone in terms of price, and the screen on this, I set this screen side by side to an iPhone 6 Plus, could not tell a difference. It is the same size screen, it's the same pixel density, it might be the same screen. The reason I say that is LG actually makes 3 times as many screens for Apple as it does for itself. You heard me right. The screen in your beloved iPhone is an LG screen. And I don't know much about BLU. I don't know if they make their own displays or not, or if they just buy a bunch of parts, throw them together, and call it a BLU phone. That's kind of what Apple does. They make some of their own stuff, but some of the other stuff they buy parts, they throw them together, and they call it an iPhone. So this could be the same exact display as an iPhone. Could be the same one. It seems to be just as bright, touch is just as sensitive. I know this is Gorilla Glass 3. Apple has to be different. They have some other kind of glass, but I guess under that glass, the panel could be the same. I can't tell the difference. My friend who has an iPhone 6 Plus can't tell the difference. It's a great screen. There's two kind of disappointments with this phone. The headphone jack. If you plug into the aux in on your car, this thing's a little quiet. There's a workaround for it. I downloaded the software that's supposed to boost it up and kind of work around it from the Android App Store. I don't know. You know, Bluetooth pairing's fine. If you have an aux jack and you have this phone, maybe you ought to go upgrade your stereo and just go with Bluetooth or get a different phone, because it's like half the volume it should be. I don't know what the deal is there. It's like the headphone jack is like half the volume it should be going into your car. In the headphones, it seems okay. It's not going to blow your ears out, but it's loud enough. For me, it's loud enough. I don't have a hearing problem though. So the other disappointment, this thing does have 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi, but good grief, I have an Apple Airport Extreme router, like the best router on the market, one of the best routers on the market. My Chromebook can pick up that 5 gigahertz signal down the block. You know, this phone can't pick up that 5 gigahertz signal out of the room. So I don't know if I have a bunch of signals around me that are interfering or what. Man, I can stand like one room away from the thing and I get half signal on 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi. Now in the 2.4 gigahertz band, I can be anywhere in my house. I can be, like 2 levels up. I can be outside cutting my grass, and I can pick up 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi just fine. Download speeds. I have used this thing on T-Mobile and have reached, oh my God, speeds. I have hit 90 megabit down with this phone before. I consistently hit 30. Sometimes I hit 60. On a wild hair, I'll hit 90. The download speeds on the T-Mobile network with this phone is incredible. kudos to T-Mobile. Change your carrier today. I'm plugging T-Mobile. I used to work for AT&T. Okay, switch to T-Mobile. Unless you live like in the sticks, go get T-Mobile. It'll be fine. Um, that's about all I have to say, folks. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. I hope everybody liked my review on this phone. Thanks.